You're watching Questions of Life. We're looking at the whole subject of poverty. Here's the next video. I always think that question about, would I be prepared for my taxes to go up and for my standard of living to go down? Would I be prepared to say, yes, I want that, so that others' standard of living would raise in our country? And that's a real litmus test, I think, for us as individuals and followers of Jesus. You know, what is my response? What, more taxes? I'm going to go down. What will that mean? Oh, will I not be able to watch football? Will I not be able to do this? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going. The trouble with the internet is you say things that get yourself in trouble. But I've said enough things that get yourself in trouble. I fundamentally think you need to think of taxes as giving. Mm-hmm. That the Bible tells us to give, and it tells us to give to the poor. And when we pay our taxes, we are giving to the poor. You're giving them a police officer, you're giving them a hospital bed, you're giving them an education. Some of us can afford to have our own private health and our own private education. Yeah. I can't, but some of us can. Yeah. But when you pay a tax, you're giving. It's not a negative thing. It's not, oh, the government's taking money off me. It's that we are choosing to support our community and to give to the poor. And I think that we need to see taxation as a command of God. Well, I go strong as that, but I'm going to get emails. But I do feel that it's important. Yep. And let me shift it back to a more biblical thing. One of the things that drives me, and it really does drive me, is the story that Jesus talks about the Day of Judgment. And he talks about separating people. And there were people who were told that they weren't going to enter the kingdom of heaven, who thought they would. Mm-hmm. And they say to Jesus in this story, what did we do wrong? And he says, I was hungry and you didn't feed me. I was naked and you didn't clothe me. I was in prison and you didn't visit me. I was a stranger and you didn't welcome me. And they say to him, Lord, when did we never saw you. You didn't come to us. And he goes on to say, whenever you didn't do that, you rejected me. And I consciously think on the occasions, and I don't do it as much as some of the other staff in the team, but over the years I've dealt with a lot of different people. I've dealt with some very unpleasant and difficult characters. And I think, but I need to treat this person like Jesus. I need to treat them like Jesus. Yeah. That may mean I have to say no, and it may mean but I still have to treat them like Jesus. And that for me is the challenge, that I don't want to meet with Jesus and him say, do you know what, I visited you, I was disguised as someone in real need who was awkward and smelly and uncomfortable, but you turned me away. And I take that literally, and it drives me that I want to be able to say, Jesus, whenever I met you, I treated you well.
It's interesting. We often think that the first and most important thing to do in all of these situations is to pray. Now, I'm not saying that prayer isn't important and shouldn't underpin everything that we do. But I think sometimes we can pray, oh Lord, would you feed the poor? Would you house those that are homeless? And we have all, our hearts are in it. It's great. It's a real heartfelt prayer. And then we get on about our business. And there can't be this disconnect between reading what the Bible says, between praying and recognizing, and we've said this before, that sometimes, and in this, we have to be the answers to some of these prayers that we're praying, that we can't just say, God, will you fix this and sort it? God says, great, let's do it together. Let's just, you like the little child with the starfish, one by one. Let's take a tin out of your cupboard. When you're going shopping, let's add in a few extra tins and a jar of coffee that you can give it to the food bank. It's that sense of prayer is great, but we need to do. So here's a situation that lots of people ask me about. And I know what I do in this situation. So quite often in Sutton or in Birmingham, you'll come across somebody who is begging. They would say, I've got no money, I can't afford to eat, I'm sleeping rough. lots of people will have come into contact with these different kind of folks, and some people are scared. What do I do? Do I just give money? Do I not give money? What would be your advice in that just very practical situation?
In the place where you live, I think it's slightly different to a place where you're a stranger. So in the place where I live, I've sought to develop relationship with the folks that beg here in Sutton. So I will not give cash because the vast majority of times that's not really going to be a long-term solution, particularly if there are addictions.
Yeah.
So there are two things that I will do. I will always say to someone, is there anything I can get you? And so the particular shops that I shop at, I will speak always to the people that are there, and you get to know them. And I think lots of us do. And you say, is there anything you need? So I know certain guys, I know which sandwich they want from Tesco's Express. The ham without mayonnaise. I know which coffee a certain person wants. And I say, is there anything I can get you? And I've learned that quite often I say, no, I'm all right today.
Yeah.
But then it's about relationship. I guess most of these guys know that we have the food bank here. So again, I will say, look, if you need more food, come to the food bank here between 10:30 and 3, Monday to Friday. If you meet someone who's new and they don't know about that, I think that's worth doing. Some of the guys I see when I'm walking the dog in the park, and I just say, how are you doing today? I just want to give people dignity and just build relationship. I think that most of the time, the first couple of times I say, can you give me some money? Can you spare me some cash? And I just say, I don't do that. If you want something from that shop, I'll go and get it to you. And I think they get used to that. And I don't have that issue with the vast majority. They don't ask me for money anymore. They kind of know that that's not what I do. So that's what I would advise you to do. If you're in Birmingham, when you're not so likely to build a relationship, I think if you've got space to do it, I think it's worth saying, do you need anything? Can I get you anything from that shop? And most of these folks have a little bit of food and a drink and occasionally a bus ticket. I wouldn't go beyond that.
Yep.
Occasionally, I've topped people's phones up. Occasionally, I've gone and got tokens or put money on their gas card or electricity card because that can't be used in any other way. So you go to the local newsagents that does that, and you take the card and you say you can top up a phone. So those kind of things I would do. See, a phone is this classic example of relative poverty. I think it's very easy for us to say, why does anybody need a phone? What we need to understand now is that the vast majority of resources that people access are accessed through the internet.
Yeah.
They are not, you cannot go to an office and talk to somebody in the vast majority of cases, and they're going to phone you. So actually a mobile phone with a little bit of the ability to log into housing, for example, you cannot access housing except through the internet. It's a necessity in our relative culture. So topping up people's phones is actually quite a significant thing when people are waiting for a call about their benefits, when they're waiting for a call about a doctor's appointment, when they're trying to, I mean, you and I know how difficult it is to get a doctor's appointment. You imagine doing that if you don't know whether you've got internet access or a phone. It's incredibly difficult. So those kind of things, don't give money. I don't think it ever really helps, but a sense of treating a person as an individual and the local things that you can do, that's what I would advise.
Also, just to say, don't give people lifts on your own in the car. Don't have them over to your house.
Yeah.
People are just so open-hearted and generous and want to bless, but sometimes, I'm not saying for all people, but sometimes you don't want to put yourself in that situation. You want to protect yourself, particularly women and men, and just be sensible.
Yeah.
And if you feel the person you're talking to is being aggressive or unhelpful, then make sure you go to a safe place, go into that shop, do whatever it is. It's very rare we come across, I mean, we know most of the people in Sutton, and it's rare, the majority of those we have any hassle with. And like you, one of the things that I love is that if you ask the guys, is there anything I can get you today? Some of them will say, oh, actually, do you know what, just a coffee would be great. You know, they're not, oh yes, right now you're asking, so here's my list, I want this, this and this. They're decent. We love our boys in Sutton because we've built a relationship and they know they can come to us for help. And they know that they're loved and they're valued.
I had a lovely situation, which I think I may share with other people before. That there's one of the folks that I regularly support when I go shopping. I would say 4 times out of 5, they will say, no, I'm fine. And one occasion, they said, oh, I'm so glad you're here. And I said, oh, what do you need? And they said, it's not me, it's that person over there. Can you do? And I just thought that was fantastic.
Yeah.
That they wanted me to help somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, that they're not just in it for themselves. That there's a sense of, you know, you've blessed us. We want you to bless others as well.
Yeah. But you have to. You're so right. You have to be wise. You have to have boundaries. Because I've dealt. There are times when whenever you hear the more convoluted story, I tend to say, don't tell me the story. I don't need to know the story. I'm going to help you whether you tell me or not.
Yeah.
Because there can be a sense of manipulation and all kinds of exaggerated stories, and the truth is always. I much prefer not needing to know the truth. I'm going to give you a cup of coffee. You don't need to tell me a story as to why you need a cup of coffee. I'm going to do it.
It's interesting though that there are some people that feel they need to justify why they're coming for help because it's such a big thing.
Yeah.
And some of the lovely relationships that have been built through our food bank of people initially coming in, just very apologetic, just, oh, this has happened, this is such a nightmare, I'm so sorry, but are so grateful. And then spent time with us. There have been folks that have come and helped out a little bit that actually have then gone on to find a job and things. And there's such joy and delight when you can just be a place of blessing where all are welcomed, where you're not judged, where actually, okay, so you're asking for some food, you're asking for this. Okay. You know, we're not mugs, we're not taken for a ride. And if we are, so be it. I'd rather be taken for a ride than Jesus say, I turned up, where were you, Cath? You told me no.
I'm sure I'm taken for a ride. I know that. And I know that when I get to heaven, Jesus will say, it doesn't matter about the people who took me for a ride. Because what I really don't want to do is to turn Jesus away.
Absolutely. Right, we're drawing to a close. I've just got one question that's come in from Paul. He says, there's been a lot of talk of poverty from a materialistic point of view. Can I ask about spiritual poverty? What is it? How is it defined? What can we do about it? Shrade is applauding that question. Well done, Paul. You've got a reaction out of Shrade.
So spiritual poverty is a sense of feeling completely unworthy, completely useless, completely having no confidence before God. And there's no doubt that that's part of God's care and compassion for the poor. There is a sense in which that's a good place to start our relationship. So there's a connection between spiritual poverty and humility. But then we need to sort of discover and receive the love of God and work out that God really cares for us. What's he going to do? He's not scratching our bottom yet.
I don't know what Shrade's doing. You all right, Shrade?
So I think that it's important for us to recognize those people who feel completely unworthy, who feel completely broken, who feel completely useless. And that's where grace and compassion comes in. And I think spiritual poverty and physical poverty are very often connected. In other words, people who are experiencing financial poverty often feel completely unworthy of God's love, feel completely ashamed, judged, and feel spiritually poor. So it's very important for us to bring in this sense of value, that people are worth something and of significance and are cared for.
So we've had a question from Ian talking about the fact that we talk a lot about meeting people's needs now. And just 2 things. Firstly, how do we begin to think about helping people to move on from where they are? And how do we make sure that there's not an unhealthy dependency?
I think this is a very important and difficult and complex issue. it's undoubtedly true that if you do everything for somebody, they can become stuck. But it's also true that some people are not able to get out of the situation they're in. So you have to kind of balance it, if you like. So at the end of the day, I think it's very important that people own the choices they make, and that we don't do things for people, that we might provide food that day, but we don't tell them how to live their life. I think that's really important. So one of the things that we would try to do as a church is, firstly, we try to signpost. So we try to help people be aware of what they can access and who they can phone. So we give people the phone, and sometimes we speak on their behalf, but only with them there. We're really trying to help them move forward. At the end of the day, the food that we provide is not enough to live on. It's a bag of food that if you ate nothing else for the last 3 days, and we only give it once a week. So we're not, if it's a safety net, and it's not the nicest food in the world, it's cheap food. So we're providing a safety net for people. But we have to continually ask them what they are doing and what they are thinking about. So there are all kinds of different issues. So those folks who have really severe mental health issues, it's very difficult for them to make choices. So we might do more on the phone for them. We might do more to try and get them the support workers that they need. And that's very, very difficult. So there are some people who have mental health issues who from the outside look like they're dependent on us. In other words, they come in, some cases 2 or 3 times a week, some cases every week, and we give them food. And we could be open to the charge of creating dependency. I would more likely say our culture has abandoned them and they need support, and they're not getting support from anywhere else. But we don't pretend that we can fix it. But in another case where it's not to do with mental health issues, it's really important to say to people, you need to take responsibility for this. So, for example, one of the things that we can't do is we can't provide accommodation for people. We can't pay for people to be in a hotel every night of the week. We have to say to people, you have to work out, these are the places you can go, these are the things you can do to get off the streets. You have to do that. We are not going to give you money to provide you accommodation that night. So in that sense, in a different kind of situation, we recognize that you can't just throw money at a person because that will create dependency. And I know there are folks who think that food banks create dependency. But our experience is that the people who are dependent on us would otherwise starve because they are that vulnerable. They need to be dependent on somebody and there's nobody else. But the vast majority of people who use our food bank actually use it once or twice. If you look at the numbers, the vast majority of the people do not come back. We were there at a moment of crisis. So I don't think that dependency is a big issue, but it's something that we're aware of. I think that in our own individual care for people, it's very important to try not to create dependency and to try to give people independence. And therefore that's about not dictating to them what they do, but encouraging them to own the decisions they make, and ownership of choice. If we move away from our food bank and into our individual care for people in crisis, it's very important to give people ownership of their life and that they are responsible for their choices. So you ask them questions, you give them options, but you don't tell them what to do, and you don't do it for them.
So we never see ourselves as the knight in shining armour that comes in to solve every problem.
No.
We take everybody on face value, they come in, everybody's different, everybody's got a different story in a different situation, but we're most certainly not trying to tell people how to run their lives and what to do. We're trying to help people to come to terms with where they're at, and we're trying to help them to move on, to take responsibility for their lives. And as you say, sometimes it's a nudge in this direction. Did you know that such and such exists? Or actually, if you don't have a phone, come and use our phone. We'll help you work out who it is that you need to call to sort it out. But we're not looking to be there, all singing and dancing, get us. We're going to sort everything out in your life.
And maybe we should do a session on sort of how we care for people, because I think it's important. But essentially, our ethos as a church is that we want to walk alongside people and point them to the one that can help them. Yeah. But we are not the Messiah.
No.
A pastoral care is about being with people in situations and bringing them to Jesus, not being Jesus for them.
Yeah. Excellent. So, final 1 minute. Sum up poverty. How can we play our part?
Sum up would be to say that God calls us to be generous and to care and to share with those who have less than us.
Yep.
That doesn't mean we're going to solve the problem and we're not to be overwhelmed by it. We do what we can. That we are not there to judge, but we are there to offer grace. And where we see injustice, where we see that things might make a difference if they were done differently, that we play our part in bringing about that change.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Can we thank you all for joining with us this evening, whether you're here in the church or whether you are somewhere watching us on YouTube, or maybe you're watching the record a little bit later on in the week. It's been wonderful to have you with us. If you've got any questions that have sprung into your mind and you want to talk about anything that we've talked about further, if you email us at qol@scbc.org.uk, we can carry on the conversation if you like. Now, we have more live streams on Sunday, 8:30, 10:30 and 6:30. What exciting things have we got this week, Donald?
Well, I just want to rescue Shrade from the happy hand.
The happy hand is not being so happy.
Fallen on her head. So bless her. What's happening this week is that on Sunday morning, 8:30, we've got Alison and Laurie coming to share with us, which is really good. I'm looking forward to that. At 10:30, we will have Lily and Jemima coming to sing with us, and you and I are doing that. And then we've got Grow Together Sunday afternoon, which is an event for children and their adults in their life. And then Sunday evening, you and Deb are leading our stream.
Fabulous. If you ever want to come to any of our live streams, whether it's Questions of Life, whether it's our Sunday live streams, whether it is Cafe Church, if you go to our website, www.scbc.org.uk, on the front page there is a box that you can click and you can book into any of those. You can also book into Grow Together and find out more about that if you have children and you want to grow and learn together and do some craft and activities and some fun stuff. Check that out as well. But from Shrade, from Donald, from me, can we say thank you, and we'll see you again soon. Good night.
Cheerio.